How does someone start their own business? Now, people normally approach me for legal and tax advice when it comes to business structuring. And yes, it's very, very, very important to do this right from the outset. But the one thing that you need to remember is commercial feasibility must be there before you spend too much time on the structuring and tax aspects. Because if there is no business, then there is no structuring that would be required. So we must factor this when we start trying to set up a business. Now, what do I mean by commercial feasibility? Unfortunately, what we typically tend to find is it becomes a cart before the horse scenario, where we go and set up all these structures, we set up all these companies, we register for tax numbers, we open up bank accounts, we get ready to file everything that we need to file, and we set this whole thing up. Now, the problem is, as soon as you set up a company, there's certain obligations over the course of the next year that now you're bound to adhere to. So even if your business does not go well, because you've got the company, you need to follow the deregistration or liquidation process. You still have to file your returns with SARS. You do still have to file ultimate beneficial ownership disclosures with the CIPC. So there's a range of obligations. Now remember, again, these obligations aren't all that tedious. There's people that can do this for you. But naturally, you'd only want to do it if your business is successful, or at least breaking even, or at least on the projected path that you desired. Right? So even if you know that your business is going to run at a loss for a period of a year or two, that's okay, because at least you've projected that and you know exactly where your business is going and what it's doing. So now let's take it a step back and let's explore this commercial feasibility and try and determine what does it actually entail. Now, commercial feasibility, in my mind, is the ability to have a look at this business and have an understanding of whether there's actual demand for whatever supply you're putting into the market. So if you have a product or you have a service that you're rendering, are there people that are willing to pay for the service? Not just family and friends, because the reality is family and friends are great, but they do typically tend to lie sometimes, because they make it seem like the service or the product that you're offering is something that they would take on. But the problem is that either they don't need it, or they are reluctant to actually take it from you because you're a family or a family member or a friend. So be very careful with that. That's not the commercial feasibility that I'm normally referring to. It's actually going out to market and trying to test the product out. And this is market testing. People typically go to market first and they test to see whether people are willing to buy the product. And this is by asking questions and doing surveys, and yes, sometimes even actually supplying the service or the product, right? And being able to do this to see how people engage you, whether they're willing to pay you, how much they're willing to pay you, and how the service is actually provided. Now, again, I'm not saying don't tick all the right boxes, because if you are providing a product or a service, you do still need your legal contract. So there are certain things that are completely non-negotiable. However, right? First, you want to test the market. You want to have an understanding whether people are going to buy it, because this might impact whether you're going to do the service through a company or not through a company. Because sometimes, even in the testing stage, you might actually want to provide the service in your personal name. Because first of all, if it's a quick service that doesn't bind you for too long, then there's really no harm. You try, you do it, you complete it, you do a good job, you walk away from it. Now, yes, if the service is very long-term, and it's a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year contract, very different story. Because there I would not actually perform the service first. I would negotiate. And if people are willing to buy into your product, then you can always register a company and actually start rendering the service. So you understand there's obviously different times where different rules apply. But if it's a quick service, it's a 1 day job, you just want to test if people call you and if they're coming to you for that, you know what? It's not always a bad idea to do it in your personal name. Also remember, most often with entrepreneurs, when starting a business, the tax rate in their personal name also tends to be quite low and under the 27% that you'd pay for a company. So it's not a bad idea to do one or two as a test to see how it goes before formally incorporating a company and beginning to formally run this as a business, right? So there's certain examples where you're still testing the market where you would not necessarily use the company. And there's certain examples, even if you are testing the market, where unfortunately it's too big not to use the company. Maybe the contract is too big or it's too long. And there, yes, you'd want to house it in a company. This goes back to those conversations I've always had around why we use companies. And this is exactly why. Because if it's just short-term service, there's no longevity that you're worried about, versus the asset protection that you get in a company where everything is now encompassed in the company and is well protected. If something goes wrong with your business in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years down the line, at least you're protected from the business mistakes potentially that your company is going to make. Also, very often you want the income housed in a company because you pay 27% tax. Unfortunately, if you start earning too much income in your personal name, you'll very quickly get above that 27% mark, which you don't want. So the company also provides better tax efficiency. And lastly, when it comes to the actual ability to run a business, to get money from banks and private equity and private debt, yes, a company works a lot better because people don't want to give money to an individual running a business. They want to give it to the company and the individual in the company. And sometimes they want to buy shares in this company, which is why the company exists. So there's a time and a place. But I certainly would not suggest that if this is your first business that you're starting up and the value of the product's very low and it's an immediate product and you know you can perform it very quickly and very easily without much hassle, I would strongly suggest use that as a market tester first before incorporating a company and being stuck with all the obligations and regulatory compliance issues that you are going to experience, which again, people can do for you, but you don't want to unnecessarily have to do it and your business, unfortunately, is not successful.